Good evening and welcome to Royce Auditorium, families and friends. This evening's performance is a program we hope you will enjoy, A Christmas Carol. The author of the book, Charles Dickens, was a great English writer. Among his other famous novels are David Copperfield and Oliver Twist. Dickens came from a family of 8 children and lived most of his life in London. His childhood was dismal, and food was often scarce. In fact, his family was so penniless that poor Charles had to work in a shoe factory when he was our age, 11 or 12. His memories of this job were so bad he seldom spoke of it. School was a place he attended off and on. In fact, his mother didn't like it when he did attend school because that meant his family was not able to have the money he would have earned. Needless to say, he never finished school. Charles Dickens had such abundant energy, he often took long walks. He came to know the streets and alleys of London better than any other person of his time. As a result, he based his stories on what he saw around him, and often included his own family as his characters. In the 1840s, when he was desperate for money during the holidays, he wrote Christmas stories. One of these was A Christmas Carol. This evening's program offers you the musical adaptation to this traditional Christmas story. We are fortunate to have the original score written in 1951 by Mrs. Eloise Johnson. Mrs. Johnson was past president of the St. Cecilia Music Society. We would like to take a moment to honor Mrs. Johnson's memory for this wonderful work. We would also like to extend our appreciation to Mr. David Ellis, who wrote the score. Also, we would like to thank Mr. Wright McCarger for his energetic help with the choir. We are also grateful to Mr. Sam Ajaruti, who is conducting the City High Orchestra. And now, let's hear it for the City High Orchestra. We are also grateful to the Music Society for the honor of performing on this stage. And now, dear audience, please enjoy Mrs. Johnson's and our gift to you, A Christmas Carol.
died 7 years ago this very night on Christmas Eve. Scrooge and he were partners for many years. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name, and there it stood above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley. Tight-fisted Scrooge was a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, clutching old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, secret and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out in a grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head, on his eyebrows and his wiry chin. Nobody ever stopped him with a gladsome, "How are you?" No beggars implored him, or children asked what o'clock it was. Even the blind man's dog would appear to know him, and when they saw him coming on, they would tug their owners into doorways and up courts. But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, wanting all human sympathy to keep its distance.
Once upon a time on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat in his cozy house, with the door open as he liked, keep his eye among our branches. It was cold, rising and the fire through every
At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house had arrived. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his melancholy tavern, having read all the newspapers. He beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book and went home to bed. The yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope with his hands. Now, it was a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large. Then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face! Scrooge was not a man to be frightened. He looked up again and saw that it was a knocker. So, he put his hand on the key, turned it sturdily, walked in, and lighted his candle. He fastened the door, walked across the hall, and up the stairs slowly too, trimming his candle as he went.
Up Scrooge went, but before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his room to make sure that all was right. He had just enough recollection of Marley's face to do that. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table. Nobody under the bed. Nobody in his closet. Nobody in his dressing gown. Quite satisfied, he closed the door. And locked himself in. Double locked himself in, which is not his custom, thus secured against surprise. He took off his tie, put on his dressing gown, slippers, and nightcap. And sat down before the fire. It was a very low fire indeed. He felt obliged to sit close to feel the least sensation of warmth from it. Yet the face of Marley, 7 years dead, came up and swallowed the fire. Humbug, said Scrooge, and walked across the room. After several turns, he sat down again, and his glance came to rest upon a bell, which, as he looked, began to swing. Soon it rang out loudly. So did every bell in the house. The bells ceased and were followed by a clanking noise deep down as if someone were dragging a heavy chain. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound and was much louder on floors below. Going straight up the stairs, going straight towards his door. What came through the heavy door and passed through the room right before his eyes? Molly's ghost!
How now, what do you want with me? Who are you? Who are you? Mercy, why you trouble me, mercy? Why you trouble me? Why you spirits walk the earth and try to trouble me?
When Scrooge awakened, it was dark. He remembered Marley's ghost had warned him that he would be visited by the first spirit when the bell tolled 1. At length the hour began, and Scrooge counted the chimes. It was Christmas again, but it was evening, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door. It was the place where Scrooge had worked as a young man. There was old Fezziwig, his kind employer, and Dick Wilkins, his friend. The housemaid, the baker, the milkman, the boy from over the way, and the girl next door. Into the warehouse they all came because it was Christmas Eve, and old Fezziwig decided to have a Christmas ball.
watched all this, remembering everything. Why was he filled with sadness when he heard them give a Merry Christmas as they parted for their home? What was Merry Christmas to old Scrooge? Out upon Merry Christmas! What good had it ever done him? Scrooge turned upon the ghost of Christmas past and wrestled with it. He pressed down with all his might. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Exhausted, Scrooge found himself back in his old bedroom and sank into a deep sleep. Awakening in the middle of a tough snore and sitting up in bed to get his thoughts together, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the ball was again upon the stroke of 1. He got up softly and shuffled in his slippers to the door. The moment Scrooge's hand was on the door, a strange voice called him by name and bade him enter. He obeyed. There stood a giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch and held it up, high up, to shed its lights upon Scrooge as he came peeking round the door. The room, the fire, the ruddy glow, the hour of night, all vanished.
The giant and Scrooge stood in the city streets on Christmas morning. The giant went straight to the dwelling of Bob Cratchit, taking Scrooge with him, holding to his robe. On the threshold of the door, the spirit smiled and stopped to bless the home with a sprinkling of his torch. There was Mrs. Cratchit in a twice-turned gown, brave in ribbons, as she prepared the Christmas dinner. She was assisted by the young Cratchits, who danced around the table. Later, from church, came Bob Cratchit with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder.
But the whole scene passed off with the words of Tiny Tim, and Scrooge and the spirit were again on their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited. It was a long night. The chimes were ringing. 11:15 at the moment. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. The bell struck 12. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, Scrooge remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him.
The phantom moved away, and Scrooge followed him along. They came to Scrooge's counting house. Scrooge turned towards the window and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not him. The spirit moved away, and Scrooge followed him along. They came to an iron gate, a churchyard overrun with grass and weeds. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and read upon the stone of this neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge.
Christmas
his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed. Scrooge saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrank, collapsed, and dwindled down into the bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own to make amends in. He had been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirit, and his face was wet with tears. Hearing church bells ringing, he ran to the window, opened it up, and put out his head. No fog, no mist, clear, bright, stirring cold, golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet, fresh air, merry bells! It was Christmas Day! He dressed himself in all his best. And at last got out into the streets. He went to church and walked about, watched the people hurrying to and fro, patted children on the head. Questioned beggars. And found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk could bring him so much happiness. He became as good a friend, as good a master, as good a man as the old city knew. His heart laughed, and that was good enough for him. It was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that be said of one and all of us. And so as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us everyone!
like to have all BEEP alumni stand up and join us in Christmas Day.